So, hello everyone, and welcome back. Again, my name is Anna Greer, and I'm hosting this Neurocalm Fatigue Summit. And I'm very happy to have with me today Kryssa Marie Bowman, who is a phenomenal hypnotherapist who loves to play with whole consciousness and various dimensions of consciousness. Her academic background is in applied psychology, and she never thought she'd work with people in a therapeutic way because she spent her time doing research and working in labs. But when hypnosis made a massive difference in her own life, helping her overcome years of agoraphobia, as well as a lifelong bleeding disorder, she knew she wanted to go into it more deeply. And she's passionate about giving the freedom she's found to others. And she hasn't regretted a single moment of that, I'm delighted to say. And Kryssa, it's absolutely fantastic to have you here.
Thank you so much, Anna. It's an honor to be here. I really appreciate you asking me to participate in this.
Oh, it's delightful to have you here. Now, I know you've got some experience, Kryssa, with fatigue, and it might be useful for the audience to understand a bit about your own experience with fatigue before we start.
Yeah, well, I mean, with agoraphobia, that often will go hand in hand to some degree with fatigue because you also have the side effect of depression, depression leading to fatigue, fatigue feeding back into the agoraphobia, and it becomes this closed loop. I was never diagnosed with ME or CFS, but I definitely had a lot of physical fatigue, emotional fatigue, and now I understand there was a component of energetic fatigue. But I've also worked with a few other people that have this. I've worked with one person who was absolutely bedridden, and showed some improvement, but it didn't end up being long-term. So I'm going to just put that out there. This is a tricky thing. It is. There's so many components and levels to it and layers to it. But I've also worked with people who have lesser degrees of it, who have definitely felt a shift in their overall energy levels and moving through that. I myself have always been a pretty highly sensitive and intuitive person. I call myself a recovering empath because I found that it's not really helpful nor necessary to absorb everybody else's emotions and energy. That's just kind of how I was wired early on, maybe somewhat due to trauma, but also I think that's just part of who I am. And so in order to be the most effective hypnotherapist that I can be, I've learned how to observe rather than absorb, and that has helped tremendously. But because I used to absorb so much, I definitely needed a lot more rest than the average person and would get fatigued a lot easier. And feel guilty about it because that's the society we live in, where we place a very high value of a person's worth on how productive they are.
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
they didn't know is that I was incredibly productive, but it was all happening internally. You couldn't see the productivity that was going on. And I think that rest is equally as important as any other thing that we do in our life. That said, my approach to it is the whole consciousness model. And we had talked a little bit about that. Do you want me to kind of go into
I'd
that?
love you to explain what you mean by the whole consciousness model.
Okay.
I mean, I think lots of people in the audience won't have come across anything like this before, and it would be great to give them a kind of map of layers of consciousness as you've seen it and experienced it, and as you work with it in your work.
Absolutely. So the metaphor that I like to use is everybody's seen that iceberg picture where like the very top of the iceberg is just a tiny little bit jutting out and it says, this is your conscious mind. And then you have the whole big part of the iceberg underneath that you don't see, and that's your subconscious mind, right? In this model, your highest consciousness would be everything. It would include the top of the iceberg, the bottom of the iceberg, the ocean, the sky, the clouds, the critters in the ocean, the observer of the entire model. So that would be the highest consciousness. And the way that I understand it, because I've been working with this for so long, is that the subconscious is more or less in charge of the body and keeping the body alive. So there's definitely a physical component to this, but also emotional. It wants to save the person from, if you have a serious trauma, it will shunt that off and turn into a repressed memory or reframe it into something that the person can handle so that they can continue to, live life. And so when you're dealing with an illness or an injury or something that's out of balance that is on that level, just purely emotional or physical, working with the subconscious mind can be incredibly effective. in my work with people who are dealing with chronic fatigue, I have found that there's another component to it, another level. It's not just physiological, it's not just emotional. Certainly those aspects are there, but there's also the energetic, and that's where the highest consciousness comes in. The highest consciousness is not necessarily all that concerned with the physical body. It's concerned with the soul of the person, essentially, the evolution of the soul of the person. And the body is a temporary vessel for that in this lifetime. I know that's a little woo. I do come from a science background, but I have come full circle into the woo here because I have just worked so much with this. I've seen things that, yeah, I mean, this model works for me and for my clients as well. So I'm not going to apologize for it because it works. Mm-hmm. And I've seen it work with a number of things, physical as well as emotional and energetic. So when you're dealing with the energetic body, you need to appeal to the highest consciousness. And here's the interesting thing. Some people in here might be familiar with parts therapy or internal family systems or ego states, right? So if you want to look at it more as this is just the highest wisdom ego state, or this is the most loving, compassionate, and wise part of your internal family system, then certainly do that. You're going to get to the highest consciousness either way. You can call it highest self, super conscious, whatever you want to call it. But it's the part of you that I believe we're actually all born with. It's the one part that is the most authentic part to us. Later, we develop subconscious parts that are very protective. So when you're appealing to the highest consciousness or the highest wisdom state or the superconscious, whatever you prefer to call it, that's the part that has everything to do with the energetic body. And the energetic body, while adjacent to and aligned with the physical body, is not the same thing.
Can you talk a bit more about the research evidence for the existence of the energetic body? Because I know that we've been able to measure electromagnetic frequencies, and we've been able to talk about neuronal material in the heart and to look at coherence between systems and something more subtle as well.
Yeah. And so what used to be called PSI, right? People were studying that as if it was this very woo-woo thing. And at the time, it was perceived that way. Well, we now know that a person's electromagnetic energetic body, that field around us is measurable. It can be detected. And some people as far as 8 feet away, like that would be, the people who spend 9 hours a day meditating. But most people, it's just kind of right here, right? You can call it your auric field if you want, but that's the energetic body. And it absolutely has an effect on the physical and the emotional body. And then, as we were talking about earlier, right before we started rolling, Dr. Lynn McTaggart has, and a number of others, she's just one of them, has done a lot of research over the past few decades on how far can the energetic body reach, or at least the thoughts of, like the energy thoughts that come from that. So she had a group of people in Australia who were sending thoughts to a group of seeds in Arizona at the University of Arizona. And there was also a control group, right? So there was the control group seeds and then these other seeds, just like plant seeds. And then the group in Australia sending these thoughts, just thoughts of like having them grow bigger, stronger, faster, healthier. And lo and behold, it worked. And so she replicated that a number of times, and every single time, same results. So we know that not only do we have an energetic body that affects us, but it can also be projected out. And that means to some degree, other people's can project into us as well. So we need to be able to, I'm going to go a little bit woo here again, but we need to be able to protect our energetic body. Just like when I was a kid and I used to absorb everybody else's everything. Mm-hmm. Now I can observe it and I acknowledge it for what it is, and I can still use my intuition in that way, but without pulling it into me. And that has made a world of difference.
Mm. And how did you learn to do that, Kryssa? What, in practical terms, what does that mean?
As far as how I protect my own energetic body?
How does that work? Okay. Like,
so I've tried different methods over the years, and the one that I found to be the most successful for just me. So if I'm sending energy to somebody else, I do a different thing. But if it's just protecting me, I'll do a thing where I breathe in and I close my eyes and I imagine that I'm just breathing in brand new, unused energy And I'm breathing it all the way down into the bottom of my feet and up, up, up. And just every breath in, I'm just breathing in more energy, and every breath out, I'm exhaling any of the old used up stale energy until I get all the way up to my head. And this can take a few minutes, but when I get all the way up to my head, then I imagine that there is like a skylight here that just opens up and lets this energy out. And then it cascades down around me. And this is all at the level of my imagination, which honestly is really not that different from your subconscious. It's a window to it, right? So we're doing this, we're going down, and then I bring it back up through the soles of my feet. And then as I breathe in, it comes right back up again. Breathe out, keep doing this. And I teach this to the students in my classes as well as to my clients. It's really, really effective. I have a funny little anecdotal story about it that I'll share with you. But so you keep doing this for a few minutes until it feels, you'll just sort of you'll be like, yep, that feels right. People who have a lot of self-doubt or issues of self-trust might not know when it feels right. So set a timer for 5 minutes and then just check in with yourself and be like, does that feel good? And I'd love to teach you guys a little bit of just simple muscle testing, but not everybody in your audience will be able to stand up and do this. But the ones who can, there is a way that if you're just standing up and you ask yourself a question, and then your body starts to move forward or backward, as long as you're safe, make sure you take care of your own ecology, that you're not going to fall, that you're stable enough to do that. But if it just naturally starts to move a little bit forward, that would normally be a yes. A little bit backward, that would normally be a no. So you can also just ask yourself, is my bubble of protection big enough now? Stand up and check it. And if you go forward a little bit, chances are, yep, you're doing great. So here's my little funny anecdotal story. I went to this concert 2020 it was in the summer of 2020 with my daughter, who at the time was 18. And it's called Red Ants Pants Festival here in Montana. And it's a 3-day long thing. And my energy level is not up to that. I was 50 at the time. But there was also just the early stages of the pandemic here, and people were still going to this concert. Maybe it was 2020. No, it was 2020. So anyway, we had masks and everything, but I was kind of concerned about, even though it hasn't really hit Montana that hard, there were people coming from all over the place. There's a lot of people here. I don't know if I feel comfortable with this. And so I said, hey, to my daughter, let's try this energetic bubble thing and see if maybe if other people feel it too, if it actually works beyond just you feeling protected. And she kind of scoffed and didn't really believe in it. And she was like, whatever, Mom. So I did it. And then we went out dancing, and people just parted ways as I came out. And she was kind of behind me, and she was like, how did that happen? And I was like, yeah, I wasn't expecting that either, but that's pretty cool. Now I can dance. Not have to worry about the pandemic.
Interesting, because what you're saying is so aligned with, indigenous understandings of energy, some Chinese understandings of qi, in terms of I was watching a video of a qi master actually just using his hand and pushing something over without touching it. There are so many aspects of being human that we don't yet in the West fully understand, that other systems have not had a problem with and have actually gone really deep in. And just even what you were saying about the breathing in the energy is terribly like some Tai Chi exercises, where you breathe in, the clean energy, you imagine out the smoke going out, the smoky energy, and breathing in the clean energy, and so on. It is extraordinary, and it does invite Westerners to actually question their very understanding of reality, right?
And I think that the technology of the human body is something that throughout different points in human history, we have been much more familiar with and aware of, and how to utilize it. We're currently, I think, right on the verge of another renaissance of that.
Yeah.
Where we're starting to go like, oh, okay. And especially now that, quantum physics has been able to say, hey, we are detecting some very interesting things here, like entangled particles. Yeah. And other things that are starting to explain some of the woo in a more scientific way, right? I think that we are right on the verge of a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, things like quantum entanglement are just mind-blowing, aren't they? I mean, they just
absolutely
it's such spooky action at a distance, and it
Yes.
really just blows the fuses every time you sort of read about it. So yeah, quantum physics is really interesting. The idea, I mean, there's a brilliant quote which I love, which is that the scientists went up the mountain and found the mystics waiting for them there. And it feels to me like the 300 and something years since Descartes split, you know, the body mind, dualism, I think, therefore I am, and the mind separated from everything else, is an aberration. When you actually look at global human history and you look at the history of knowledge, even in the West, that is an aberration. And the very fact that we end up talking about mind-body approaches to illness reflects that aberration. The very fact that we even speak in that duality reflects that aberration. So in your practice, Kryssa, what kind of are you seeing in terms of when people respond, when you work with the energy body, what are you noticing the impact in kind of how that materializes in a life, in a body, in the emotional resonance? How does that work for people?
Well, first of all, I never give a guarantee, because sometimes we're going to go a little bit into the woo territory again here, but sometimes when I talk to a person's highest consciousness and ask, can you clear this ailment, this illness, this dis-ease, this imbalance, almost always it'll say yes, but then every once in a while it tries and it can't. And then I always ask why. And it will tell me. And it will tell me if it just needs additional help and resources, which you can extrapolate from that, whatever you want. In most cases, it means like angelic help or other guides, spirit guides, helpers, ancestors, etc. But it will tell me why. If it can't actually clear something out, it will straight up say, this is intentional. This is necessary. This is something that this person has chosen in order to activate them to a higher level. And it could be that it's because there's somebody that they need to come into contact with that they're not going to meet unless they have this ailment and they are actively trying to find resources to heal from it. And then when they do meet that person, things click into place and now they're activated. To whatever that next level is. It could be that they had a blueprint, which is not to say it's not destiny. I feel it was absolutely free will, but it does seem anyway, just from doing these sessions, that we have some blueprints that we come in, because there's basically like a curriculum that we're like, okay, I want to make sure that I learn this and this and this. And I don't know who the professors are going to be yet. I might have to take the class more than once, maybe, whatever. But this is basically like the structure of what I want to learn. And so there's a blueprint, and at some point in the blueprint, there will be like, have this debilitating illness, injury, disease, etc., so that you can, and then fill in the blank. The highest consciousness will tell me what that is. And so sometimes I can say, can we gently accelerate that learning process so that the person can go ahead and gain the wisdom of this experience? Or can we at least turn down the volume on the painful part, or the part that is out of balance, out of alignment, or causing the fatigue, so that they can have a bit of their life back while still navigating through whatever it is that they have this thing in their life for. So I never guarantee that this is going to absolutely take a thing away or release it, but I can almost always guarantee that we'll at least find out why it's there. And what's going on with it, from the point of view of their highest self. And that's not me talking. I'm not psychic. I'm not saying your highest self is saying this. The client themselves, it's coming out of their own mouth. It's their highest self talking to them.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
In a trance state. Yeah.
So what I'm intrigued by, because like I've got to confess, I don't know where I am with all of this. I find myself drawn to it. I also find myself questioning it, not in terms of the veracity of what you're saying, but in terms of like the personification of it, the way that we humans personify the information we get, as a someone. I find that really interesting, because I suspect that there's a lot of information out there in the universe that we pick up in all sorts of ways. And I'm intrigued by the fact that the CIA and the old KGB spent so much money researching precisely how you access the field, or the, I think the CIA called it the matrix. But the idea being that
for the remote viewing, the astral.
Yeah, exactly.
projection.
The idea being that the universe itself contains all the information available in the whole, in every part. So there's so many layers to this. It's such an intriguing journey and such an intriguing set of questions.
What's interesting to me is that the part of us that feels the need to understand it is just our conscious mind, which is that big in comparison to our whole consciousness.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like a bunch of kindergartners sitting around a table trying to understand the Geneva Convention. You know, like this little part of us is like, but I want to understand everything. And then the highest self is like, but you don't need to understand everything.
Yeah, I think intuition comes from a different place, doesn't it? I mean, I don't know about the kind of, the reality of it, or the kind of way it stacks up in a system or anything like that. But I just know for myself that, my cognitive capacities are incredibly limited compared to my non-cognitive capacities, particularly the higher intuitive capacities, where I know what I couldn't possibly otherwise know without knowing necessarily how I know it. But I've been able to test often enough the accuracy of it. And it always startles me. It always completely blows me away. So there's something very powerful in this whole way of actually understanding reality. Absolutely. So what does it mean, Kryssa, for people struggling with fatigue in their day-to-day? What would you encourage them to do on their journey?
This is going to sound a little counterintuitive, but this is what I encourage people to do when I run into this, is to stop the battle. Stop battling it. Now, that doesn't mean just accept that you're always going to feel this way. It just means like every time you're putting energy and effort into feeling bad about the fact that you feel bad, it's only going to make you worse. Mm-hmm. So feeling bad about feeling bad never makes you feel better, ever. So if you are struggling with this, and then you are guilting yourself, shaming yourself, berating yourself, criticizing yourself, that doesn't ever result in feeling better. So being gentle and listening to what is the message that it's giving you. And it might be different from day to day, because again, we're talking physical, emotional, and energetic. There's multiple bodies at play here. One day it might be saying, this is a day that we just don't feel comfortable being around other humans. Another day it might be saying, this is a day that we need to go ahead and take that unfamiliar step, that stepping out of the comfort zone, that risk, and maybe go left instead of right and see what happens. And then another day it might be like, well, that was a really beautiful experiment, but man, I'm wiped now. It's just going to take me a day to recuperate from having stepped out of my comfort zone. And that's okay. The fact is that you are stepping out. And so be proud of that, even if it's just tiny steps. Just like a little kid who is misbehaving in some way, guilting them, yelling at them, punishing them. Does that ever actually help them to behave better? Ever?
Yeah.
I mean, it might put fear into them, and then that turns into defiance later. But I feel like, treat this the same way. Like, okay, I'm going to give you love. I'm going to love you so much, and I'm going to ask you questions. I'm going to stop judging yourself for this, and just get curious instead.
That's so interesting, because there's so much I find working with clients that comes down to sometimes very early attachment material. And there's a beautiful sense in what you're saying of layers of attunement, of real attention, real attentiveness to the layers of the self, which to me seems to be key to any kind of wise way of living, is this ability to tune in and to have these layers of sensitive attunement, as you say, to all the different aspects of what's going on, the multi-layered nature of what it is to live in this world as a physical, emotional, psychological, psychic, spiritual, energetic, etc. being.
Absolutely.
I love that, because I love the love in it, Kryssa. The self affirmation and the love, which goes, of course, straight into secure attachment all the way down, and gives the whole system the message it needs, that, you're safe with me, you're safe with me. And to say that to ourselves is so healing, I think.
And getting the highest self to speak that to the fear-based subconscious parts is incredibly powerful. I mean, I've seen it perform what some people would consider miracles. And I'm not the one doing that. I'm sort of like the translator or the facilitator. It's the person themselves. It's their highest consciousness talking to their subconscious parts. So basically their intuition talking to their anxiety and fear.
Yeah.
A lot of people can't tell the difference because they've been living with anxiety and fear for so long that they think that that is their intuition. But intuition never, ever, ever shows up as fear-based. It always shows up as a gentle suggestion, something with a hint of excitement or joy to it. That day that you do want to step out of your comfort zone, you might have a little bit of apprehension, but there's still like I think something really good could happen today.
Yeah.
That's the intuition,
It really brings to mind that bit in the Bible, which, I think it's Moses. He goes up onto the mountain and wants to encounter God, or God calls him up, and there's a storm and all sorts of stuff, and he just knows that none of that is God. And then there's this still, quiet voice, that shows up, and that the stillness, the quietness, is the quality that is recognizable as that kind of pure insight. It's a very beautiful way of thinking about it. And I think,
and it's never invasive. It's always invitational.
Yes.
It's never going to be like, you must do this. No, that's anxiety talking.
Yeah.
But intuition is like hey, why don't you try this? What's going on over on this side of things? But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's that quiet, gentle, almost sweet voice. It's loving. It's compassionate, it's supportive, it's empowering, it wants the very best for us.
And what's beautiful here as well is what I'm hearing you say very clearly, I think, and you can tell me if I'm mishearing you, but I think what I'm hearing you say very clearly is that people ultimately heal themselves, that any practitioner is just a facilitator to what the person themselves is capable of, and putting the agency there, leaving the agency there, respecting that agency is so important in the healing process.
Absolutely. And just like you were saying earlier in the interview, that we actually have everything that we need already in order to move to whatever the next level is for us. And all my only job really is just to put the client in touch with that part of themselves. And that's the first thing that I do with pretty much every single session I have is I give them homework that helps them to learn how to retrain their reticular activating system.
Yeah.
And that's something that they can do at home at a conscious level. But yeah, if you get all the other pieces into place, but their reticular activating system is still waking up every day looking for what's wrong, they're not necessarily going to be feeling any better because they're still looking for what's wrong.
Yeah. I mean, it's that beautiful story, isn't it? That I think it's Igor Ledachovsky uses that example of, you get a new car, you go out and everyone else is driving the same car. Are you a trendsetter of unbelievable proportions and influence? Or is your brain doing something?
When I was pregnant with twins 20 years ago is when I first noticed this. And I didn't know that that's what it was. But suddenly I saw twins everywhere.
Yeah.
And I was like, when did everybody start having twins? Is there something in the water? And it turns out it was my reticular activating system, because whatever we are emotionally focused on, its only job, because it's basically the algorithm of your brain, its only job is to go find more of that.
Yeah.
So even if we're like saying to ourselves, I want to get better, I want to get better, I want to get better, but what's actually behind all of that is I'm afraid of getting worse, I'm afraid of getting worse, I'm afraid of getting worse. The reticular activating system is going to listen to the one that has the strongest emotional component to it.
Exactly.
It's not trying to make you feel worse.
Yeah.
It's just an algorithm. And when people say to me, is that real or just my imagination? I just nod my head, because I'm like, they are one and the same, honey. If you've ever had anxiety and like future paced some catastrophe and had an actual visceral response to this thing that's never happened, it might not ever happen, then you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say imagination is your reality.
Yeah, and there's loads of neuroscience, isn't there, about the power of the visual cortex in particular to affect the whole physiology. So using visualization is such a powerful resource tool for those of us dealing with fatigue who want to actually move through it in a skillful way.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, brilliant. It's been so great talking to you, Kryssa. And I think you've got a free gift for the audience, haven't you?
Oh, yes, I do. I have an ebook on retraining your brain. It's basically 5 steps, and one of them does go into great detail about how to retrain your reticular activating system. And these are 5 things you can do that are not breath related, because everybody is familiar with all of the ways to, downregulate your central nervous system through breathing techniques. I feel like that's pretty easy, pretty common. You can find that anywhere. So these are 5 non-breath related sort of like hacks that you can do. So just like your mind affects your brain, right? Your brain also can affect your mind. You can reverse engineer that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what this ebook is. And so I'll send you the link and then you can post that. Is that how you do that?
We'll link it below the video and the video.
Okay, perfect.
And then people will be able to come and find out more about your work as well, which would be brilliant. So thank you very much, Kryssa.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anna. Have a wonderful rest of your, I think, evening, right? My day is just beginning here.
It's brilliant to see you.